Robert Harrison had once been the kind of man who commanded every room he entered. Tall, broad-shouldered, with that confident stride that came from building an empire from nothing. He'd made his fortune in real estate, transforming empty lots into thriving neighborhoods. But that was before the accident, before the night a distracted driver ran a red light and changed everything. Now, at 57, Robert sat in a wheelchair in the grand ballroom of his own mansion, watching life happen around him rather than being part of it. His dark hair, touched with silver at the temples, was still impeccably groomed. He wore a tailored navy suit that fit perfectly, even seated. But none of that seemed to matter anymore. The charity gala was in full swing. Crystal chandeliers cast warm light across the polished floor. Women in elegant gowns glided past, their perfume trailing behind them. Men in tuxedos laughed and clinked glasses. It was exactly the kind of event Robert used to love. He'd organized it himself, like every year, to raise money for the children's hospital. But this year felt different. This year, people looked away. Oh, they were polite enough. They'd greet him, shake his hand, offer those careful smiles that didn't quite reach their eyes. Then, they'd make their excuses and drift away. Too uncomfortable, too unsure of what to say. Robert understood, in a way. He made them face something they didn't want to think about. That life can change in a moment. That any of us could be in that chair. Margaret Chen, one of his oldest friends, had at least been honest. "Robert, you know I care about you," she'd said earlier, her hand briefly touching his shoulder. "But seeing you like this, it's just so hard." Then she'd walked away too, her heels clicking across the floor, leaving him alone again. He'd stopped counting how many times it happened. The glances, the awkward pauses, the conversations that died mid-sentence. Even his own son, David, had made an appearance. Earlier, stayed for exactly 20 minutes, and left with barely a goodbye. Too busy with his own life in California, he'd said. Always too busy. Robert wheeled himself toward the edge of the ballroom, away from the crowd. He found a quiet corner near the tall windows overlooking the garden. Outside, he could see the rose bushes he'd planted with his late wife, Catherine. She'd been gone 5 years now. He wondered what she would say if she could see him like this. Probably something wise and kind, the way she always did. "Excuse me, Mr. Harrison." The voice was soft, hesitant. Robert turned to see Maria Santos standing a few feet away. She was his housekeeper, a woman in her early 30s with kind eyes and a gentle manner. She wore her work uniform, an orange top with white pants, though she'd added a fresh-pressed look for the evening. In her arms she held her daughter, little Emma, who was not quite 2 years old. "Maria," Robert said, managing a smile, "you didn't have to stay for the gala. You should be home with your family. I wanted to help Mr. Harrison. Make sure everything runs smoothly." She glanced around the ballroom, then back at him. Her expression held something he hadn't seen much lately. Not pity, just simple kindness. "You've been very good to us. When Emma was born, you gave me time off. Paid time. Not many employers would do that." Robert waved a dismissive hand. "You're a hard worker, Maria. You deserved it." There was a pause. Music drifted from the string quartet in the corner, a gentle waltz. Couples had begun to move onto the dance floor, swaying together in that timeless rhythm. Robert felt the familiar tightness in his chest. He'd loved to dance. Catherine had taught him, patient through all his clumsy early attempts. Now that was just another thing taken from him. Little Emma squirmed in her mother's arms, reaching toward the floor. "Down, Mama, down!" Maria set her daughter down carefully, keeping hold of her hand. Emma wore a bright pink dress that puffed out when she moved, her curls bouncing around her cherubic face. She looked around with those wide, curious eyes that small children have, taking in all the lights and colors and movement. Then she looked at Robert. Really looked at him, not past him or away from him. She tilted her head, studying his face with that intense focus toddlers have. And then she smiled. Not a polite smile, a real one, full of delight. She tugged her hand free from her mother's grip and toddled toward him, her little legs unsteady but determined. "Emma, no, don't bother Mr. Harrison," Maria said, reaching for her. "It's all right," Robert said quickly. He felt something unexpected, a lightness in his chest. Emma had reached him now, standing right in front of his wheelchair, She placed her small hands on his knee, bouncing slightly. "Dance!" she announced, her voice high and sweet. "Dance with Emma!" Robert felt his throat tighten. "Oh, sweetheart, I can't dance anymore. I can't walk." Emma looked at his wheelchair, then back at his face. She didn't look confused or uncomfortable, she just kept smiling. She reached up, grabbing his hands with her tiny fingers. "Dance!" she insisted, beginning to sway side to side, still holding his hands. And something shifted in Robert's heart. Something that had been frozen for months began to thaw. Here was this little girl, too young to know what was impossible, too innocent to see his limitations. She just saw a person, someone to dance with. Slowly, Robert began to move his upper body, swaying gently with Emma's rhythm. She giggled, delighted, bouncing and turning in wobbly circles while still clutching his fingers. The wheelchair didn't matter to her. The fact that his legs didn't work didn't change anything. They were dancing together. The music continued, and so did they. Emma's laughter filled the space around them, pure and joyful. Robert found himself smiling, really smiling, for the first time in months. His eyes grew damp, but he didn't care. Maria stood nearby, her hand over her mouth, tears running down her cheeks. Around them, gradually, people began to notice. The conversations grew quieter. Heads turned. The crowd watched as this little girl in her pink dress danced with the man in the wheelchair, both of them completely absorbed in the moment. When the song ended, Emma threw her arms up in triumph. "More dance!" Robert laughed, a sound he'd almost forgotten. "Maybe we should rest for a minute, little one." Emma climbed onto his lap, settling in as if his wheelchair was the most natural seat in the world. She patted his cheek with one small hand. "You nice," she said simply. Robert wrapped his arms around her, holding on to this tiny person who'd given him something he desperately needed: acceptance, joy. A reminder that life, even changed, even difficult, still held moments of pure beauty. "Thank you, Emma," he whispered. "Thank you for dancing with me." Maria approached, wiping her eyes. "I'm sorry, Mr. Harrison. She's usually shy around people." "Don't apologize," Robert said, his voice thick with emotion. "This is the best thing that's happened to me in a very long time." Over the next weeks and months, something changed in Robert's home. Emma and Maria became regular visitors to the main house, not just for work, but for company. Emma would toddle into Robert's study while he worked, bringing him her picture books or demanding more dances. Maria would prepare lunch, and the three of them would eat together, talking about simple things: the weather, Emma's new words, stories from Maria's childhood in her small village. Robert found himself looking forward to these visits more than any business meeting or social event. Emma didn't care about his money or his accomplishments. She cared that he made funny faces and read stories in silly voices. She cared that he always had time for her. One afternoon, as they sat in the garden, Emma asleep in his lap, Maria said quietly, "You know, Mr. Harrison, I almost didn't take this job. After my husband died, I was so scared I couldn't provide for Emma alone. But you've been like family to us." Robert looked at the sleeping child, her curls soft against his chest. "Maria, you and Emma have given me more than I've given you. Before that night at the gala, I thought my life was over. I thought I'd lost everything that mattered. But your daughter taught me something important. She taught me that love and connection don't require anything except an open heart." He paused, watching the roses sway in the breeze. "I spent so many years chasing success, building things, proving myself. And when I lost my ability to walk, I thought none of that mattered anymore. But I was wrong. What matters is this: being here, being present for the people who see us for who we really are." Maria smiled, her eyes glistening. "Emma has always been a wise little soul. Even at her age, she knows what's important." As the seasons passed, Robert's mansion became warmer, more alive. He started a foundation to help single parents like Maria, providing support and resources. He reconnected with old friends, but on different terms now. He didn't need their pity or their discomfort. He needed their honesty, their presence. And every week, without fail, there was dancing. Robert would wheel into the ballroom, and Emma would run to him, her arms outstretched. The music would play, and they would move together, finding joy in the simple act of being together. Years later, when Emma was older, She'd ask her mother about those early days. Why did I want to dance with Mr. Harrison? Maria would smile, remembering. Because you saw what others missed, sweetheart. You saw a man who needed kindness, and you gave it freely the way only a child can. You reminded him that he was still whole, still worthy of love and joy. And Emma would nod, understanding in her own way that sometimes the smallest gestures carry the greatest weight, that an invitation to dance can change a life. That love recognizes no barriers when it comes from a pure heart. In the end, that's what Robert learned, not from his success or his wealth or his accomplishments, but from a little girl in a pink dress who saw past everything else and offered her hand. Life doesn't end when it changes. It just asks us to dance differently. And if we're lucky, very lucky, someone small and wise and wonderful will show us how.